Hello, I'm Amy and this is Art Conspiracy. Welcome. I am teaching a Wabi Sabi watercolor class right now, and we had our first class today. A couple students got their time zones wrong. I know it can be confusing because I'm in Thailand and they're in America. Anyway, I decided to record the demo for them, and you get the benefit because I'm going to record it for you as well. So I'm going to go through the lesson in an abbreviated way, and I hope you like it. Okay, we're going to start with some drawing. So let me pin this. Take it away. Okay, the first thing that we went over in terms of a drawing concept are ellipses. And ellipses are basically a circle in space and in perspective. So if you have a circle here or a disc or anything round, and then as it turns, this becomes an ellipse and it gets more and more narrow. By the time it gets super, super thin, and let's say it's a coin, it has a little thickness, it might look like that. And then right exactly on its side, it's going to look something like that. So that's a circle in space. An ellipse is really, really handy when you're drawing around objects. And our subject today was some flower pots. So I did an ellipse, and you want the same height versus width, even though it's smaller. And then you have a nice pot in perspective. And then you have another pot over here. Again, it's the same basic ellipse, but it can be a different size. But basic same height to width ratio. And these two pots are sitting on the same space on the same table. And we give them a table line, a little horizon line. It's a little crooked. And I also talked about doing a thumbnail, and I usually make a thumbnail about as big as my finger here. So just to give you an idea of how big that might be. So here we go. We placed it in the frame, and then we had some plants. Something like that. And I'll just do that squiggly line to indicate plantness. And let's say I need more headroom. I might change my mind and make this a vertical format, right? And oh my gosh, look at this. Whoa! What are those plants? And I'm going to add a few flowers. Bada boom, bada bing. Perfect. And then I talked about light source, because it's good to know where your light's coming from. So let's say we're going to make it come from the right, but it can be from here, it could be from above, whatever you want to do, but it gives you a reason to do certain things. In other words, like here's the light hitting this pot. So it's going to be darker on this side. So it gives me a reason to shift the color and to shift the value. Same over here. This is going to be darker on this side. It also gives me a reason to make this dark inside the pot. That makes sense. And over here, it's the opposite. And then maybe I'm going to have a shadow. So the light source just gives me a reason to do all kinds of things. And then with the plants, oh my gosh, plants have a light side and a dark side too. So you got to think about that. I'm going to do more with the paint, but you get the drift. Even your flowers here can have a light side and a dark side. So there's your thumbnail. And that was basically, how we started. We talked about ellipses, and we made a couple pots and put a couple plants in there and gave it a light source, and we're good to go. So onward to the painting. So one of the things I told my students right off the bat is that when you have a pan kit, or this is a tube version where I squeeze the colors into my mixing tray, I always make a cheat sheet with my colors so I can see what the colors are. You can see when they're really dark like this, it's very hard to see what the true color is. So I always make a chart, and I also write the names, because I think you need to make friends with your colors, get to know them. There's common colors that you'll see all the time, and then there's like specialty colors, but it's good to get to know them. You can order them, reorder them if you need to. And if you do a little research and it says make a green out of Prussian blue, you'll know what Prussian blue is. So that's important. And here's a little variation on that for my little travel kit. You can see how dirty my trays are. I'd like to have them dirty. If I need a clean area, I'll clean it out if I'm going to say mix a pure yellow or a color that I don't want corrupted. But otherwise, I use this. I use these for flavor. And here's the blue one. My little cheat sheet, which is very fun. Okay, so that is important. And now let's get to the painting. Okay, so I'm going to do this a little bit at warp speed. Here's my spritzer, which I'm going to spritz my colors and prime them so they are going to be ready to go as soon as I am. And I'm going to work in marker so you can really see my drawing. But you don't have to use line. Obviously, some people don't want to have any line show. You can just use pencil and it'll kind of disappear. So I'm going to be a little bit judicious about where I put my line because I am going to be stuck with it. So I'm not going to put it in the back because I don't want that to show. And then my plants, jaggedy, 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 jaggedy. Plantness is fun. Here's a couple of plants down here that fell on the table. Here's my other pot. I'll put this one behind. Now I skipped kind of drawing the ellipses because I'm a pro. But you might draw them just to make sure that your pots look good. And then here's my table. And I'm going to make a couple flowers that I'm going to protect. I'm going to put one over here too when I do my green. So I'm paying attention to the border of my composition. You can have things go off, which is fine. Or you can have things very contained here where I have like a cushion. That's fine too. What you don't want to do is have things really close to the edge and feeling crowded and sort of claustrophobic. So either take them well off or give them some space. One of the two things. Okay, so I have 2 pots of water. One I'm going to keep super clean and one's really for my dirty stuff. And I'm going to start with my green. Put my water over here so my and I know what my colors are because I have them labeled. Let me move this over here so you can see what the heck I'm doing. So I'm just going to use a pre-made green, but you can make your own green with blue and yellow. And this was another thing I told my students, see how many greens you can make. You got to see what greens you have, and then also see what you can make with the blues you have and the yellows that you have. I bet you can make a ton. I'm going to use some of my flavor over here just to cut down the intensity of this green. I had a little dark, spicy flavor over here, and I just added it to my green. Looks a little blue, so maybe I have a blue-green. Okay, so I'm going to work around my flowers, and I'm just, in an uneven way, laying down my base color of green. And I think, you know, I'm being careful to leave my flowers. But then once I'm outside of them, I work with a little bit more of abandon. So just boo, do, do, do. There we go. Okay, that's your base coat. Now, a very quick and easy way to make some light and dark is to just blot the tissue. Just blot your colors a little bit. And I blotted on this side because I want this plant to be different than this one. So I let the dark stay right next to that. So then I want this one again to show up. So I'm going to get some really dark and then drop in a little bit more dark right next to my plant so that it's kind of going behind it. And then I'm going to put some darker tones right to the left of my flower. And I'm working wet on wet because when I put in my base color, I wet that shape. And so now all those colors are going to stay in my shape. They're not going to go into the dry area. They'll stay right within that shape. So you can have some fun with that. Just da, 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 da. Okay, good. I'm going to let that dry. Another thing I showed my students was taking a really strong color. I'm going to take a really strong color to show you this, Prussian blue. And again, I know my light's coming from over here, so I'm going to put down it's not quite dark enough, a strong edge. So I have the edge here next to that other pot, and then I'm going to clean my brush. Now all I have is water, and I'm going to just drag that over, clean it even more. Okay, so I do have light and dark, but it's not quite as dramatic as I thought. So I'm going to dab it, make a little texture. Nice. Very nice. Okay, I'm going to do that with another color. And check this out. I'm going to use some yellow. Not a pure yellow, but just a little bit of yellow over here. I don't care if it's golden, perfectly golden. Anyway, I want to paint this pot, but I don't want to touch this because it's still wet. So I'm basically going to show you to leave a little gutter. Leave a little strip of white. You can see it there. There. That way I'm protecting that pot. And again, I just blotted to add a little texture, which I think is nice. And you could work on your flowers, but it's wet all around it. So you'd have to avoid the green, or you might want that color to sort of mix and mingle a little bit, up to you. Okay, the other thing I think I shared with my students was mixing a neutral. So we already have a green here. So I'm just going to add some red. I'm going to add the complement and purposefully make kind of a grayed down color. You just keep adding until you see it changing in a way that you like, and always have a test sheet. Oh, it looks kind of purpley. That's nice. That's nice. Okay, I'm gonna go with that. Have a little test sheet so you can test your colors. So again, I'm gonna just lay this down as a base color. I'm not gonna touch my yellow, because I don't want that to run. And I'm gonna just make this whole side a little bit darker. And then I'm gonna clean my brush. Now it's just water, but it's picking up some of that paint. Wow. And I might just leave this light here just because it looks kind of cool. Why not? And I got some of this purple. I'm going to put it inside my pot just to make that dark. This is what painters do. They have a color, they make a color, and then they think, where else can I use the color? You might even put some in your plant. Look at that. And now my plant has a color that relates to the table. I don't think I told my class this tip, so bonus. Okay, coming down to it. Now I'm going to get really thick red. Actually, I'm going to use even brighter. I have this beautiful orange color here, which is pre-made. You can make an orange with red and yellow, but anyway, I have this gorgeous one. Now this is really wet, this green, so I'm going to just be a little bit careful. You can see I'm not quite touching the edge. Here it's pretty dry because the paint is thin, so I'm not as worried. You see that? It's not running. Some more. There we go. Then I might just take relatively clean brush. It's a little bit wet. And just push that. See, oh yeah, it's running a little bit. That's all right. Let's just see what happens if we just let it have a little bit of interaction. I'm going to see, oh, look at that. Made it light again. Little red, bam. Down here, like that. Just drop a little bit more paint in there. Oh, maybe this is the falling plants down here. Totally fun. I like to think of plants as kind of not solid. Their colors kind of explode out into the air. Okay, looking good. This is not dry, So if I want to add a little darker color, I'm just going to pick up a little random blue I have here, just because we're in a really playful mood. And I'm just going to just increase that shadow. There we go, just a tiny bit. Little shadow under my plant. Call it good. Maybe I add a little bit more dark here, maybe a little bit back here. Just making my composition interesting. Okay, the light back here, I'm going to go with yellow ochre, and I'm going to be pretty good about using my clean water, and I'm just going to do a really light wash. Again, it's really dry over here, so I can touch, but let's just see what happens if we let these colors mingle. So this side's wet, so I'm going to see what happens here. Oh yeah. See that? I have some mingling. That's okay. The alternative is to leave that little white edge here. A little blotting action with the background subtle. Good. I'm happy. Now when this dries, or even before it dries, I can get really, really thick paint, thicker paint, and I can do some more texture. I can totally play with what this plant might look like, as well as put little darker tones next to the flowers. Let's say I want to put a little center in the flower. Again, just playing with the paint, playing with the color. This was our first day of this class, so it's all about just experimenting and sort of seeing what the paint can do. But we did have a plan, which I think is important. It's important to have a plan. Our plan was put the pots in the middle, give them room to breathe. And then we started with our green. We avoided certain shapes. And as they were drying, we worked on other shapes. And then we played with what happens if it mixes or getting a little thicker so it won't move much. So we actually did a lot in this little tiny lesson. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep painting, keep commenting. Stay safe. Bye from Art Conspiracy.